Deshaun Watson, with what happened on Friday and then what could happen tomorrow, what's his future, immediate future, or this season in the NFL?
I think, like, from the league standpoint, we still don't have full clarity on that because they still could levy a suspension. Now, I've heard the argument is that time served. He spent a year not playing. He was paid during that year. So, like, I think that there is a little bit of gray area there. But I do think that there's a good amount of teams that are comfortable with where this is right now after the grand jury made its decision not to move forward with criminal charges. And I can tell you this too, Dan, there are a handful of teams. I mean, every team that's had an interest in him, right, has had its security people on this. And those security people, for people who don't know, that's ex-law enforcement that these teams employ. Those people have been following this for the last year. So it's not like teams just started doing homework. I'm also told that a smaller number of teams had private investigators they employed on the ground in Houston over the last year. So there are a couple teams there that are hitting the ground running now, that know everything about this case and that are well aware of where the civil cases stand. They have their own opinions on how all that went down. And I mean, I think you can see with the aggression of teams like the Saints and the Panthers that, like, not only is that interest there because he's a 26-year-old franchise quarterback who led the league in passing in 2022 or in 2020, who is under contract for the next 4 years, which is about as valuable a commodity as there is in pro football. They've also come to a comfort level with the off-field stuff. And that's not to minimize any of the stuff that Deshaun was accused of, but there are a lot of teams that have done a lot of homework on this. And I think you can see which ones are in a good place as far as, having their owners, which is an important piece of this, on board with making a run at Deshaun Watson.
But is this one fell swoop a big check that he's going to have to write for these women, assuming?
I think I think that there's a chance that happens. Now, my understanding was a while back, there was like, an affordable settlement offer made to Deshaun Watson that he walked away from. At one point, I know he had resolved to, let these things play out and try to prove his innocence. Now, like, do I think he's still thinking that way when he's so close to going to a new team, when maybe that new team says, before we trade for you, we need you to settle all of your lawsuits? Yeah, I think it's possible that, that however a trade goes down, it leads to the settlement of these lawsuits. Because, I think Deshaun Watson probably wants to move on right now. But like, I think there have been opportunities to do that, to settle all of these over the last year, and Watson has been resistant to that. So I don't know that it's a slam dunk that he necessarily does it. I think if it makes sense for him and helps him move on from a football standpoint, maybe he would.
What, Saints, Panthers, are they at the head of the class here for Deshaun Watson? Anybody else you throw in there?
Saints, Panthers, Cleveland. I've been mentioning them for a year on Deshaun.
I know.
I really think Cleveland wants to take a swing here because if you look at their roster, again, a lot of guys in the heart of the prime of their careers. I think Philly, is another team that everybody should just at least keep an eye on. Seattle, they take a swing. The Panthers, I think, have been, clearly the most aggressive team over the last year. They made an offer to the Texans before the lawsuits were filed last year. So they were involved before all of that. And then the Saints, even when Sean Payton was there, they were at least sniffing around and keeping an eye on it. So those are the five teams that sort of stick out to me. And, I think the other interesting thing about this is, Texans GM Nick Caserio took a lot of slings and arrows for not trading him, in March and in April, and then again in the summer, and then again before the trade deadline. It looks like being patient and letting this thing play out could pay off in a spectacular way for Caserio. Last year before the lawsuits were filed, I can tell you this, Dan, at one point, I know he had, offers of 3 first-round picks. Now, at that point, he was resolved to keeping Watson on his roster, right? The lawsuits made him, soften his stance on that. But the fact that he could get back to where the Texans were, from a capital standpoint, in January and February of last year when they were unwilling to trade for him, I think shows you that the patience that Casario showed over the course of the last year probably is about to pay off.